On a frigid January night in 2025, tragedy struck over the Potomac River near Washington, D.C. The city, blanketed in a thin layer of snow, was winding down after a typical winter day, but as darkness settled over the capital, a series of routine flights and military exercises would set the stage for an unimaginable disaster. American Eagle Flight 5342, a regional jet carrying 64 passengers and crew, was making its final approach to Reagan National Airport. The flight, originating from Chicago, was filled with business travelers, families returning home, and crew members looking forward to the end of a long shift. The pilots, experienced and calm, prepared for landing as the city lights shimmered below. At the same time, a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, call sign PAT-25, was conducting a night training mission with 3 soldiers aboard. The helicopter crew was practicing maneuvers essential for national security, flying low and steady over the river, their night vision goggles glowing green in the cockpit. For them, it was another routine exercise in a high-security zone. Both aircraft, operating in the complex, restricted airspace of the capital, unknowingly converged over the icy river. The Potomac, partially frozen and eerily quiet, reflected the blinking lights of the 2 crafts as they drew closer. Despite advanced radar systems and strict protocols, a series of miscommunications and technical failures meant neither crew was aware of the impending danger. In a split second, the jet and helicopter collided, debris rained into the water, and all 67 lives were lost instantly. The impact sent a shockwave through the night, shattering the silence and scattering wreckage across the frozen river. Within moments, emergency beacons triggered, and the chilling reality of the disaster began to unfold. The catastrophic crash stunned the nation and became the deadliest U.S. aviation disaster in decades. News of the collision spread rapidly, with live coverage dominating every major network. Families waited anxiously for updates, while the country mourned the loss of so many lives in a single, devastating moment. First responders rushed to the scene, launching a massive search and recovery effort in the freezing darkness. Firefighters, police, and Coast Guard teams braved the bitter cold, combing the icy waters for survivors and wreckage. The scale of the tragedy tested the limits of local resources and the resolve of those on the front lines. The tragedy raised urgent questions. How could 2 aircraft collide in one of the world's most protected airspaces? The Federal Aviation Administration and military officials faced intense scrutiny as investigators began piecing together the events that led to the disaster. Was it human error, equipment malfunction, or a failure of communication between civilian and military controllers? The search for answers would spark a sweeping investigation and a national reckoning. The National Transportation Safety Board, joined by congressional committees, pored over flight data, radar logs, and cockpit recordings. The nation demanded accountability, and the families of the victims sought justice and closure. The Potomac collision was not just an accident, it was the start of a story about failure, accountability, and the urgent need for change. As memorials grew along the riverbank, the tragedy became a rallying cry for reform, forever altering the way America thinks about air safety and the invisible risks above its most iconic landmarks. 11 months after the crash, the U.S. government made a rare and significant move. In a formal court filing, the Department of Justice admitted full responsibility for the collision. The government acknowledged that both the Army helicopter crew and an air traffic controller failed in their duty of care, directly causing the disaster. This admission cleared the way for families to receive compensation without a lengthy trial over fault. The decision followed months of investigation and public hearings that exposed systemic failures. For grieving families, the government's admission was a painful validation. This was a preventable tragedy, not a freak accident. The focus now shifted from blame to justice and healing. The government's admission centered on a series of fatal mistakes that unfolded in rapid succession, each compounding the last. These were not isolated missteps, but a cascade of errors that ultimately led to disaster, shaking public confidence in military aviation safety. At the heart of the tragedy were the actions of the Black Hawk crew, whose decisions and oversights would prove critical. The crew, though highly trained, faced a situation that tested the limits of their experience and judgment. Investigators determined that the Army pilots failed to maintain visual separation, a fundamental requirement when operating under visual flight rules. This lapse meant they lost crucial situational awareness, a mistake that can be fatal in busy airspace. Night vision goggles, designed to enhance safety during low-light operations, ironically contributed to the problem. The goggles significantly narrowed the pilot's field of view, making it far more difficult to detect other aircraft, especially in a crowded sky. Another critical error was the decision to turn off the helicopter's transponder. Without this device, the Black Hawk became invisible to the jet's collision avoidance system, eliminating a vital layer of protection that could have prevented the accident. The crew's limited experience navigating the intricate and congested airspace over Washington, D.C. only made matters worse. The region's complex flight paths and heavy traffic demand constant vigilance and familiarity, which the crew lacked. In the final moments, no evasive action was taken. Evidence suggests the pilots never saw the oncoming jet until it was far too late to react, leaving them with no chance to avoid the collision. These errors, when combined with risky operational procedures and gaps in training, created a perfect storm. The investigation revealed systemic issues that went far beyond a single flight crew, pointing to broader problems in military aviation protocols. The tragedy forced a hard look at how military flights are conducted near busy civilian airspace, sparking urgent calls for reform and a renewed commitment to preventing such disasters in the future. The breakdown wasn't limited to the cockpit. The air traffic controller on duty failed to issue a required traffic advisory, despite seeing both aircraft on radar. This crucial warning could have given either crew the seconds needed to avoid disaster. The government admitted the controller's mistake, but argued pilots still held primary responsibility. Victims' families disagreed, insisting a timely warning might have saved lives. The lapse exposed the immense pressure on controllers and the need for better procedures in mixed military-civilian airspace. The crash revealed cracks in the safety net meant to protect everyone in the sky. The NTSB's independent investigation was relentless in its pursuit of answers. Teams analyzed wreckage, flight data, and cockpit recordings, and held public hearings that exposed critical flaws. Testimony revealed issues with Army pilot training, night vision goggles, and even inaccurate helicopter altimeters. Thousands of pages of evidence made denial impossible. The NTSB's findings formed the backbone of the government's admission of fault. A final report, with safety recommendations, is expected by the tragedy's first anniversary. The goal: turn hard lessons into real change to prevent future disasters. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the families of all 67 victims came together to file a sweeping wrongful death lawsuit against both the U.S. government and American Airlines. Their legal action was not just about seeking financial compensation, but also about demanding answers and accountability from those they believed responsible. The courthouse quickly became a focal point for the nation's attention, as grieving families, legal teams, and the media converged to witness the unfolding legal battle. The government's rare and significant admission of liability changed the entire trajectory of the case. Instead of years of contentious debate over fault, the proceedings shifted directly to the question of how much compensation was appropriate for each family. This admission was a turning point, signaling a willingness to accept responsibility and focus on making amends, at least in a legal sense. Now, the court's attention is on determining what constitutes fair and just damages for each victim. This process is complex, involving careful calculations of lost earnings, the emotional pain and suffering endured, and the immeasurable loss experienced by loved ones left behind. Legal teams meticulously review each case, ensuring that every family's unique story and hardship are heard and considered. American Airlines, on the other hand, continues to contest its role in the tragedy, maintaining that it should not bear responsibility for the events that unfolded. Their legal team argues vigorously in court, seeking to limit the airline's liability and protect its reputation, even as public scrutiny intensifies. The government's admission now stands as the law of the case, shaping every aspect of the ongoing proceedings. This legal stance will influence not only the current litigation, but also how similar cases are handled in the future, setting a powerful precedent for governmental accountability. For the families, however, the legal fight is about far more than monetary compensation. It's about holding powerful institutions accountable, finding a sense of closure, and honoring the memory of those they lost. Each court appearance is a reminder of their loved ones and the need for justice. The outcome of this case will set a lasting precedent for how government failures are addressed in future disasters, potentially changing the way similar tragedies are litigated and resolved. Legal experts and the public alike are watching closely, aware that the stakes extend far beyond this single courtroom. Ultimately, the courtroom battle represents a crucial step in the long and difficult road to justice. For the families, it is a chance to have their voices heard, to seek accountability, and to ensure that such a tragedy is never repeated. Behind every headline are families shattered by loss. 67 lives, athletes, soldiers, parents, children, were cut short in an instant. For loved ones, the government's admission is both validation and heartbreak. Their tragedy was preventable. The legal process forces families to relive their pain, but many persevere to honor those lost and demand change. The ripple effects extend to first responders, airline staff, and the military community. The fight for answers is a testament to resilience and the need for truth. The family's courage ensures the victims are never forgotten. Their quest for accountability is a call to make the skies safer for all. The Potomac collision has become a catalyst for sweeping change in aviation safety. Officials are reviewing military flight procedures near civilian airports and calling for stricter separation of airspace. Mandating transponders for all aircraft and upgrading helicopter altimeters are top priorities. Training for pilots using night vision goggles is being overhauled to emphasize situational awareness. The crash exposed the need for better communication and vigilance between controllers and pilots. New rules and technology are being fast-tracked to close the gaps that led to disaster. The legacy of the 67 lost lives is a renewed commitment to safety. Through action and reform, the hope is to ensure such a tragedy never happens again.